Hello and welcome again to another edition of The Average Guys, a special edition, may I say, to boot. I'm your host, Johnny D, and with me, my co-host, Kenny K.
Johnny.
How you doing, Kenny?
I'm hot.
We're here at the Longview Tennis Club for the 3rd annual Legacy of Hope Pro-Am Tennis Classic. It benefits the Duluth Clinic Education and Research Foundation for Cancer and Heart Disease, and about 40,000 have been raised in the past 2 years. It's a 16-team tournament on Sunday with a $2,000 purse from 10 to 2:30 p.m. And today on Saturday we have tennis pros Tim Mayotte and Gene Mayer participating for the fundraiser. And Kenny, we have a special guest sitting right next to us at this moment.
We have a real special guest here. This is a gentleman that was rated in the top 20 of all the world's tennis players when his career was
at its peak.
At its peak, yeah. And we've got him here with us today, Tim Mayotte.
Hey, Kenny.
Tim,
how are you? Nice
great.
to see you. John?
How you doing?
A little hot here.
Oh,
I hear ya.
You're not used to this, are you?
Microphone, Kenny.
Well, they actually told me to bring a parka. They said it would be a little bit cold. It was in the 40s last week, so I got very warm tennis clothes on.
Well, it's unusual weather for Duluth, but you were asked to come here, and you're here now finally. What are your thoughts on Duluth and what you've seen so far?
Well, first of all, it's just a treat to be a part of this event because, you know, as players, we really want to, Gene and myself really want to spread the good word about tennis, and it's really a thrill to be able to come to a small town that might not get a full-blown tournament to bring world-class tennis to a town like Duluth. So it's a real thrill to be here and also to help out with the clinic and be a part of a good cause. And also to reach kids. You know, we're going to have a clinic for kids. We met some of the local players yesterday, so it's really about those 3 things.
So you came into town yesterday, and you were working with the youth and all that, and putting on clinics and so
Yeah, we
forth.
came over here to Longview yesterday afternoon and met some of the local kids, a bunch of the kids from Marshall High School who played on the team there, and we get a sense of what's going on as far as tennis here in Duluth.
Well, you know, Tim, this wasn't always just tennis. They used to have hockey rinks out here.
I heard that, in fact, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess he used to beat up too much on the tennis course when they froze him over, so.
And now they've gone strictly just to the tennis courts. But I played hockey out here, and there was a couple of guys from Duluth East, if anybody remembers watching, the McGregor twins, Don and Doug McGregor.
Uh-huh.
And they played, oh gosh, I'm going to say back in the late 70s, early 80s here at Longview. And those are 2 names I remember from out here.
Yeah, well, they should try a little ice tennis. Anybody try that? We do that in the winter.
Ice
Put up a
tennis in
net.
Minnesota,
Yeah.
huh?
That could work.
Get it started at Longview tennis courts?
Well, it's something we can try. We got indoor football.
But Johnny, you got some questions for Tim on his professional days and his playing career.
Tim, first of all, were you and Gene Mayer teammates at Stanford? I read in the paper that you were a Stanford alumnus.
We're both from Stanford, but no, Gene left before I came in. He's a little bit older than I am. So.
And then John McEnroe was also a Stanford alumnus.
Stanford, yeah, John left the year that I came in. He was at Stanford for 1 year as a freshman. So he left in the spring of 1981. I came in the fall of 81.
So before he left, did he leave any indelible marks on the Stanford?
I think McEnroe left indelible marks everywhere he goes, both physical and mental, emotional, spiritual.
Okay, so he had a temper even in his college days?
Well, I think John was always a perfectionist, and he always had, as one of his biographies was entitled, "A Rage to Win." And that came clear.
Yeah.
You know, he was obviously one of the great players of all time, and didn't stand for anything less than perfect.
So most of your career, you're ranked in the top 20, including top 10 finishes in 87 and 88. Now, we're talking about names from the past. The hardest serve you ever faced was Boris Becker's?
Was Becker. That was the toughest serve for me to return, in fact. But I mean, my career is kind of interesting because it really bridged across 3 generations of players. When I came in, at the top of their games were guys like, well, Nastasi was just fading out, but I played Vitas Gerulaitis and Roscoe Tanner, who was here a couple years ago. Connors, obviously, at that point was just starting to tail off his career. He had won one of his last majors. Then we got into the middle period with Lendl and Becker, who were really the dominants. And then, and then at the tail end of my career in the late 80s and 90s, some of still the great stars of today, Agassi and Sampras and Chang and Courier. Those guys are all guys I played and actually beat. So I really went across those 3 generations of stars.
And then in 1988, you won the silver medal at the Seoul Games in Korea.
Right.
Now, was that the first year tennis? Was that a introduction sport, or was that a full-blown
No,
medal
it was
sport?
the first year that tennis had been reintroduced as a full medal sport.
Okay.
They had it as a
Reintroduced.
yeah, because actually tennis until the 20s was a full medal sport in the Olympics, and then when Davis Cup had grown in such stature that the players felt that they didn't need it as part of the Olympics, then tennis was taken off the list of Olympic sports.
Because of the Davis Cup.
Well, that's my understanding, is that
Okay.
Davis Cup, because it's an annual event and because it had grown in prestige to such a point, they felt that they didn't need tennis in the Olympics because we had our own international competition.
Okay.
But there was a movement in the early 80s to bring it back. 1984, they had it as a demonstration sport in
That's what I thought.
Los Angeles, I think it was. Steffi Graf and Stefan Edberg won the 2 gold medals that year. And then 88, we played in Seoul for the first, and it was actually interesting because we were the first acknowledged professionals of any sport to play in the Olympics. But the irony was we were actually the only amateurs at the Olympics that year because we were playing for free and everybody else really was playing for their careers.
Really?
It's one of the great lines of Jan Tiriak, who's Becker's coach. He said, the tennis players are the only ones here playing for free because we didn't get any compensation, whereas the other people, obviously that's their whole life. If they do well, then they're basically undeclared professionals.
Okay. Well, now, in hindsight, when you were talking about Davis Cup and the Olympics, don't you think it's more prestigious, it helps tennis more to be in the Olympics than Davis Cup? I mean, people talk, but, the average fan out there really doesn't follow the Davis Cup as much as they might follow the Olympics and see the name to give it a little more notoriety and so forth. And
yeah, it's actually one of the great tragedies that folks in the United States don't follow Davis Cup. I just came from the Davis Cup where the U.S. lost to Australia in Boston last week. And for you folks at home, if you ever get a chance to see a Davis Cup match, you should absolutely go because Davis Cup competition is just one of the most exciting things in all sport. And outside of the United States, for instance, France or Germany or South America, Davis Cup is one of the 2 or 3 biggest events that they have all year long, because it just becomes part of their national fabric, the way the World Series is here or something like that.
No, we lost to Australia 4-1 last week. And then there's all this controversy, should we say, with Pete Sampras filling in for, and I can't think.
For Todd Martin.
For Todd Martin.
Right.
What was that all about that? You can fill us in more than I can.
How much time do we have?
have?
It's a very long drawn-out affair. Essentially what has happened in the past couple of years, there's been a complaint from a lot of folks that the very best United States players are not playing Davis Cup. That includes Sampras, but along with Michael Chang and Andre Agassi. What has happened there is, I think you said it, you put your finger on it by saying, Davis Cup is not followed that much. These guys were playing Davis Cup in the early 90s and winning, but not getting any attention for it. Folks in the United States were not following it. It's not getting press attention. So they basically stepped out, and it's been a long, drawn-out affair. But Sampras chose to come back, but there was some question why he didn't play singles.
And why do you think he didn't want to play? Because, what's that? Why do you think they didn't want to play singles? Because he just thought he was coming onto the team sort of on the spur of the moment? And
exactly. Because Todd Martin and Jim Courier had competed on the team the whole year. He didn't want to step on anybody's toes by coming in and taking over their spots.
And that's honorable. But do you think tennis could do more to promote Davis Cup play than the average viewer like us don't have a...
Actually, at Boston, there was a big forum with former Davis Cuppers there and some marketing folks to talk about how do you make Davis Cup more accessible and more known to the U.S. tennis public.
Because I find that it's really hard to follow. And then the format of it, it seems like, 1 minute we're in, the next minute we're out, but the next minute it starts up again.
Yeah, it's fair. A lot of folks feel that and some of the players, and Sampras included, feel it should go to like a Ryder Cup formula in which you play it every other year. So you have the Cup, somebody wins it, and then for 2 years it stays in that one country until the competition starts up the next year.
Okay, that would make it, because at times I figure, I thought we're out, but now it's starting again, so.
It starts to get, we are out, but we'll get another shot at it come January of 2000.
Okay, so then it all starts up again. See, that's one of my things that the average person,
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
So Tim, you've played against some big names in the sport of tennis. You mentioned Agassi, McEnroe,
Borg. Did you ever
Borg, I have
Borg?
played Borg.
Oh, you
yes.
have?
Yeah,
In-
in an exhibition match.
Okay.
He retired in '82. I had just started my career in '81,
Okay.
but I did play against him in exhibition matches.
You said Becker was the hardest serve you had to face.
Right.
What do you mean by the hardest serve? Just the sheer speed of it, or?
Well, there's a couple things that go into having a great serve: the speed, and then also the placement. And Becker had that combination down.
Anticipation on your part, anticipating where the serve might go, or?
Well, that becomes a factor when you're playing somebody who's serving so well like that. Particularly when we had some Titanic matches on the grass in Wimbledon. When a guy's serving so well like that, it gets to the point where you almost have to guess or anticipate where the first serve's going, because when it's coming in 130 miles an hour plus, you better guess right, or else you're not going to get a shot at the ball.
So Becker was the hardest person for you to play against as far as the serve was concerned.
Right.
What about the overall player that you had to play?
Lendl was definitely
Lendl?
hard, yeah. I beat every player in the world except for Lendl, who I lost to 19 times in a row.
Sounds like we're going to be running out of time here. We're going to wrap this thing up shortly. I want your impressions of Longview, and you're going to be playing here today, and some of the things that you're going to try to bring here to Longview today while you're here.
First impression, I just think this is just a wonderful club. You can see it's set up in the neighborhood. It's public tennis, which I believe in. I grew up playing on public tennis courts, and I think everyone should have access to it. Then we're going to be working with the adults and the kids who come out here, showing them some of the basics. And then Gene and I are going to get together and do a singles exhibition to show them a little bit of high-level singles play.
Great, great. So how much time we got here? Any idea? So, anyway, I tell you what, how has the game evolved over the last 20 years since you've been playing?
The big change is that some people are squawking about and some people love is that there's a lot more power in the game now. Everybody's serving big. You've got a bunch of servers serving over 130 miles an hour. And so, and like in all sports, it's the athleticism and the power that's changed the game away from finesse.
And not so much the men either as it is the women. There's a lot of bright names in women's tennis. The Venus or the Williams girls.
Sisters, right, yeah.
Again, you have some of the Russians there. Kornikova, is it?
Kornikova and Capriati's comeback, which has been of interest of late. Steffi Graf, who's hung on and obviously played so great at Wimbledon.
Is she one of the greatest women players ever?
Well, some folks would say she's the best, although Martina would get a little bit upset if you said that. But
I was gonna
don't
say.
say that to Martina. Fortunately, she's in Aspen, so she won't be picking up the program.
What were your thoughts on this?
To me, Graf is a better player.
What were your thoughts back? I don't remember the year when. Who was it? It was the. They had the two. Was it Bobby King?
Oh, Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs.
And Bobby Riggs.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
And it was a great show business moment for the sport. And a lot of people feel actually that was the height of the tennis boom. It was the most watched in person and on television tennis match in the United States of all time. I mean, it just had an enormous impact. I think there was 41,000 people at the Astrodome to watch a tennis match. I mean, that was just unthinkable. And at the same time, there was like I can't remember, 60 million or 75 million folks watched at home. And so, sure it was show business and ham and egg, but it was a great show business moment, and a lot of people actually felt that it had a big impact on women's athletics. As we watched the women win the World Cup and all the speculation, all the celebration around that
For that little trophy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I just had to say.
Yeah. But a lot of folks credit Billie Jean King and in part that match with the growth of women's athletics as being an acceptable, marketable, profitable enterprise.
Not just tennis.
Not just tennis. I mean, she had such an enormous impact on women's athletics and women's issues. She was voted one of the 25 most influential people of the last generation by Time magazine because of the impact. Now that match had something to do with it.
Because I can remember being 8 years old and running home that night to watch the big match, and it was,
Right.
it was the event. Sports fans too young to remember, and
It was a big event. Bobby Riggs was the
Big-
chauvinist pig. He came out with he had a baby Ruth. Chicks carrying him out there. It was very, very exciting time in the sport.
So anyway, I think this might be time to wrap it up here, wouldn't you think, Kenny? How much time we got here?
15 minutes more. We got this guy here too.
Oh, all right,
okay.
great. Okay.
Well, thank you guys for having
Tim,
me on board. It was a treat.
Well, hey, it's a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Kenny, thank you very much.
Timmy?
Okay, you gonna bring out another guest?
I guess so here.
Hey, Kim, sign
Yeah.
up before you leave. Sign his.
Okay. I just do that right on the air.
Oh yeah, could you do that?
Love that.
Fantastic.
Anything else you guys need me to do for you? Just let me know.
Okay, great.
Got Lou Campbell here today, and just a spectacular help. from all the people here, actually.
From Longview and PACT. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thank you guys so much for having me on the show.
Well, we've got every court here filled right now with tennis players from the
Okay.
area. I think
My man.
All right.
All right.
All right, a real interview.
Thanks
Okay,
again.
thanks again, Tim.
Bye now.
And now we have with us Darren Danielson.
Hey guys.
How you doing, Darren?
Darren?
What a day, huh?
Oh, man.
It's
Fantastic.
Hey, try playing tennis.
Yeah.
You're just sitting here talking.
hot. Well,
It ain't no hot. Get up there. I've been out there for 3 hours already.
you haven't broke a sweat though. So what brings you out here now, Darren?
Well, I don't know. I'm just helping out with the PACT-TV stuff here myself. We're going to be doing some television stuff here for the, as we do every year. This is the 3rd annual Legacy of Hope, and we're talking to the players, doing a little play-by-play, and trying to introduce this event to the public.
Okay, and so how long have you been affiliated with Longview in itself?
Well, actually, as long as I've been in Duluth, about 15 years now, we've played down here. But with regard to this tournament, since its inception, I'm more involved in the tournament here rather than Longview itself.
Okay.
And, so this is the 3rd time we've had this this particular tournament, and it's worked out very, very well. Weather has been perfect every year too, so we got a good streak going. We're happy about that.
So how's your game coming along?
My game is just an average guy's game. I'm just an average guy out here when it comes to tennis. I'm just here to learn too, like everybody else here, to see these pros out
You know, Johnny, tennis is a game filled with a lot of love.
you gotta love the game. It's kind of like golf.
Well, that's why I can't play. If you knew the competitive streak in me, I can't really, I can't handle it. I get too frustrated, you know. But what a beautiful day. It's hot out, but this is what it's all about. Beautiful weather. What do you like to see that's going on with the local scene, though, in the tennis
Well, this is
community?
fabulous, actually. This event is so good for tennis in Duluth, and it's just so good for Duluth too. We've increased in numbers every year that this tournament has been held, and as you know, this is a money-raising event. That is the purpose of it. The Duluth Clinic Foundation puts on this tournament, and they pay these professional players, Gene Mayer, Tim Mayotte. Last year it was the Jensen brothers, Luke and Murphy Jensen, very entertaining young men and fabulous tennis players in their own right. The year prior to that we had Vijay and Anand Armitage, the Armitage brothers from India, and it has drawn people to Longview, and it has also drawn people into the game of tennis, and it is a wonderful sport. It's called the sport of all ages because, I mean, if you'll see out here, there is people from all ages in this particular tournament, and it's designed to raise money for the Duluth Clinic Foundation and all the good work that they do.
Okay, great, great. Well, Darren, thanks for your time. We have another guest lined up here. Boy, the
Darren,
average guys
thank
are
you.
being...
Thank you. Good luck, guys. Have fun.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks for helping.
Boy, now we have another tennis legend of the past, Gene Mayer, and the present, should I say. How you doing?
you? Good to see
Great,
you.
great.
Gene?
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
You want to take a
Okay, good.
seat on our wood chips here and join the show?
On the chips.
So how do you like Duluth?
Duluth is beautiful. I mean, it's been a pleasure to see Tim and I coming over the hill, driving in from Minneapolis. We were surprised by how much beauty around the lake, and having dinner, walking around a bit this morning. It's a treat to come to somewhere new, and particularly a place so beautiful.
So do you get a chance to visit smaller towns like this?
Not often. I mean, generally most of what we do would be in medium to larger places.
Okay.
And very often with not that much time to look around.
Okay, so even though you turned pro in '76, now you're in the senior
That's
tour.
right. Exactly.
So your traveling doesn't allow a lot of time to come to smaller venues like Duluth?
Well, what happens is we have our sites. I mean, some of them are mid-sized markets. Let's say this year we have tournaments in New York. We have tournaments in Naples, Florida. We have one in Chicago next week. Detroit is going on this week. So there aren't generally smaller towns that much involved. And then we, because of the busy traveling schedule, we don't travel that much otherwise, where we get a real chance to see that much of what's going on. So it's a treat to see some new places and to see what's going on in terms of people as well as tennis interest.
Well, talking to the community people that you've come across since you've been here, since yesterday, what do you feel the pulse of the community in tennis in Duluth in general is?
Well, I think it's terrific. I mean, everyone certainly has been extremely hospitable, also very interested in tennis, the success of this event. We've been received, very nicely and well, and we appreciate the opportunity not only to get to see what's going on from the tennis viewpoint, but to meet people and to get to know them a little bit. So it's an opportunity at a little bit slower pace than the tournaments that we play at, which are so busy, and often we have so many appearances that it can get impersonal. This is very personal.
So when you are on the road like this, let's say you're doing a big tournament, they have you guys going nonstop?
Right. Well, I mean, what we'll have is we'll have a match every day, then we'll have a clinic that we might do in that day, cocktail party appearances. So there's scheduled events pretty much all day, as opposed to on the circuit where you play your matches and you're done. There's a lot more of corporate appearances and the corporations really drive the event, the sponsorship. So there's a lot that's tied in there, so there isn't the opportunity to slow things down and really spend a lot of time with people.
Okay. So in your career, you won 14 singles titles and 16 doubles. So you found a fine balance between singles and doubles.
Well, actually, I played doubles very well early on in my career before I started to play singles well. As soon as I started to play singles well, I pretty much stopped playing doubles.
Okay.
So they didn't coincide, but I really enjoyed both of them.
Okay. So now you played at Wimbledon.
Sure, all of those.
Just tell the viewers out there a little bit about what was it like the first time you went out there and seen what it was like?
Actually, the first time I went out, I had qualified. You had to win 3 matches at this smaller club and long matches in order to get in. I played a fellow from Russia who was seeded number 2, and I remember going on the court and hyperventilating almost to the point where I was so tired after 3 or 4 games on grass. You rarely hit any balls. It's not like the French Open where you're working that hard. But just the sense of the All-England Club, the enormity of the event, the first time playing, can be overwhelming, and it really was. I didn't really lose to him. I lost more to the All-England Club.
Okay, so it's just an overwhelming experience.
Absolutely.
So
first
what they
time,
try
very daunting.
Whatever they try to convey on TV, you really can't get a feel until you go there.
There's a sense where, the players will sort of waltz out on the court and, relax and play their matches. There's lots of nerves, there's lots of pressure, particularly in the Grand Slam events, which are the most important events. And people trying to break in against the Sampras or an Agassi or those kind of people. Everyone has that feeling the first time, and it's certainly very hard to break in and produce good results early on in that kind of enormous setting.
Gene Timid, we had asked him who a couple of players that he played against, hardest served, that player that he played against, and overall player. If there's a couple of players that come to mind.
I would say from a point of view of the best serve, I would say it was McEnroe of time, and I would say that probably goes on till today. Sampras is a great server and serves very hard, but I think McEnroe, in terms of placement, what he could do, the way the ball moved and the variations of the ball, there were subtle differences, I think, that would probably still make him the best server ever, even though Sampras can serve harder and is a fabulous server. And I would also probably give McEnroe the lead in terms of the quality of tennis that he played. It was relatively short compared to, let's say, a Connors in terms of length of career. If you talk about length of career, I'd probably give that to Connors. If you talk about quality over a shorter period of time, I would say McEnroe produced the most gifted, sort of magical tennis that's ever been played.
Okay.
Well, throughout your career, you played a lot of matches, a lot of tennis, obviously. What were some of the more memorable, or if you can think back to the most memorable moment in your career?
Well, I would say there are probably 2, and I would say they're more memorable from an emotional viewpoint probably than from a pure tennis and importance. One was winning the French Open doubles with my brother.
Oh,
Sandy.
okay.
Right, Sandy, and that was very exciting. And the other, probably, which has now really been downvalued in the world of tennis, was winning the Davis Cup. McEnroe and I played the singles in France in '82 when we won the Davis Cup. And I know my dad, being a European, having played Davis Cup himself, that was instilled in me even when I was 5 years old, the importance of Davis Cup, and winning that and the sense of being on that team probably outweighed in terms of emotional reaction and in terms of real sheer personal importance.
Well,
more even than the Wimbledons and the U.S. Opens.
me and Tim, Tim and Ken were talking about the Davis Cup. Do you think that the Pro Tour the American Pro Tennis Association could put more of an emphasis on Davis Cup? Because I guess I fail to realize just what a big event it is to the rest of the world.
Right. Well, it's an enormous event for the rest of the world. I think there are some difficulties because it's not a week-long event. It's multiple weeks. If you're on a strong team, you wind up playing 4 matches, so that takes away from the tournaments you play and the preparation for other events. I think there could be possibly some adaptation that could be made that could keep Davis Cup in its important spot but also combine with it some modifications which would make it a little bit easier for the top guys to play. I think in general, though, the underlying problem is that for many Americans, they just don't care about Davis Cup. They don't, and I think it's a question where McEnroe the same, and as well as talking to Tim, Davis Cup was something special that we looked forward to. The opportunity to play, just to play on the team, was a real honor, and it's something that we really looked at as a highlight of our career. A lot of other players look at it as intrusion in their schedule, and you can't change or legislate that kind of sense of feeling and playing for your country. So it's a sort of two-edged sword, but I think with some modifications it could potentially be made more appealing in terms of scheduling for a number of the top players to play.
Because I can correlate that with the Ryder Cup. I didn't really learn much about it until just recently, when they've been putting more of an emphasis on the battle between Europe and America.
Right. Right.
I just didn't realize the same concept went with Davis
Right, and
Cup.
there are great old, you have Australia and the U.S. are great old rivalries, so those having won the most Davis Cups, and there's something about it. We were talking yesterday, you can throw away all that you know about tennis, about pressure and things, to when you're warming up and playing your first Davis Cup match. You can forget how to hold the racket, what side you're supposed to be on, whether you're playing singles or doubles, unlike even a Wimbledon or a U.S. Open, which can be very daunting also.
I'll tell you, I really like this guy from Australia, Patrick Rafter. Is he going to be one of the great
Premier?
players?
Yeah, I mean, Tim and I were just talking on the plane. Yeah, we were chatting about things, and he had just gone to a Davis Cup celebration in Boston. Unfortunately, I had a tournament in Finland that was pre-scheduled, but it was a celebration of 100 years of Davis Cup, and Pat is just fabulous. I mean, his attitude towards the game, how lightly he takes himself, how hard he tries all the time, the importance of Davis Cup. On top, he's great looking, charismatic. I mean, I think he's a wonderful, wonderful spokesman for the game. He's a terrific guy, and he's a guy I cheer for every time he plays.
We got a little bit of time left here, Gene. That's great. I see here that you were born in Flushing.
Yes.
So you were destined to be a tennis player.
Exactly. Flushing. I was married, actually, pretty close also. So lots of important events in that area in Queens, New York.
So as a child, were you going to the U.S. Open and watching the
Absolutely.
events?
Yeah,
Okay.
I started playing tennis at 2 years old.
Your
with
father
my
was a
dad,
pro.
Taught both my brother and I to play. So by the time I was 5, 6 years, I was playing lots of tennis, going to the U.S. Open at Forest Hills at the time, which is where I played my first U.S. Open. And all of that was really part of a childhood experience.
Well, let's talk about your father for a minute. He was a pro, and he is a European.
Right, he was from Hungary and played Davis Cup both for Hungary and Yugoslavia. There was no professional tennis at the time because that didn't start till 1968. So up until then, it was a purely amateur sport. He did play Davis Cup, and then when he was a lawyer in Europe, and when he came over here, he started teaching tennis and taught both of us to play. Coached, the only person ever to coach 2 sons to be in the top 10 in the world at the same time, or in the top 10 in the world ever. So it was really something that was, from the moment, as long as I can remember, there was tennis.
Yeah.
So should we look for the third generation? You have a son, Jared, and a daughter, Sarah.
Well, they play a little bit, but much more fun. I think a number of the players, I was just with John McEnroe in Finland last week, and his son was playing with my son. I think we're almost leaning in the other direction, let them enjoy it, not have to live up to competing with their dads. And if they really want it, maybe, but we almost go in the other direction of, letting them
make their own
decision to be exposed to other things.
I really enjoy watching the McEnroe and Connors matches. As a spectator of the sport, what are some of the matches or players that you like to watch?
Well, those are goodies right there. I mean, I think one of the interesting things of the play in the 80s when I played was when you had a McEnroe and a Borg and a Connors, you not only had charismatic individuals, but you had varieties of game style. So you had McEnroe serving and volleying, you had Connors playing aggressively from the backcourt, and you had Borg being a counterpuncher. So each time they played, you got not only great players, great personalities, but you got that interesting matchup where I think what we found now in the men's game is that too much of the same style and too hard hitting against hard hitting doesn't make for interest. When Sampras plays Agassi, it's interest. When Sampras plays Ivanisevic in the finals of Wimbledon, tennis, is set back 10 years by 70 aces, all the errors that are made. And I think that changes fan interest when there isn't that kind of creativity within the points.
Okay. Well, Gene Mayer, welcome to the Average Guys, and thanks for coming on and spending some time talking to us.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
And
we're going to be here at Longview Tennis Courts throughout the day. And
taping this and other events that are going on.
We're having a wonderful time here, and we've had some wonderful guests. and we'll be back again shortly.
And feel free to come down and check it out. If not this year, next year. Hopefully we can keep this show going on throughout the winter months into the spring.
Yeah.
And make this a canned show that we can share with you, the viewers out there who make this show possible. And if you don't make it out this year, come out for the 4th annual.
I see the mayor's here, so we've got some wonderful things going on out here, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And until next week, it's cool to be average, and we'll see you later.